The marble floors of St. Augustine Medical Center reflected the morning sunlight like polished glass. Doctors hurried through the lobby. Nurses pushed patients toward elevators. Executives in tailored suits discussed million-pound expansion projects. No one noticed the old man quietly mopping the entrance. His name was Robert Hayes. 62 years old. Blue janitor's uniform. Silver hair. Gentle smile. For 36 years. He had cleaned the same hospital. He knew every hallway. Every nurse. Every security guard. Every patient who had ever needed a friendly smile. Yet to most visitors, he was invisible. Robert never complained. He believed dignity didn't come from the job you had. It came from how you did it. Every morning before sunrise, he wiped fingerprints from the glass doors, polished the handrails, and greeted everyone with the same words. Good morning. Have a wonderful day. Some people smiled back. Many walked past without even looking at him. He didn't mind. Because long before this hospital became his workplace, it had become his second home. 10 seconds before we continue. If you enjoy emotional revenge stories, shocking family betrayals, and unforgettable endings, don't forget to subscribe to Bloodline Revenge Stories, like this video, and share it with someone who believes kindness always comes back around. Now, let's continue. 35 years earlier, Robert's life looked very different. He had been happily married to a schoolteacher named Sarah. Together they had 2 children, Olivia and Ethan. Life wasn't perfect. Money was always tight. But their home was full of laughter. Then, everything changed. Sarah was diagnosed with an aggressive illness. For 2 years, Robert worked double shifts. Morning cleaning, night maintenance, anything to pay the medical bills. Despite every sacrifice, Sarah passed away. Robert never forgot her final words. Promise me. They'll always know they're loved. He kept that promise. Every birthday, every school concert, every parent-teacher meeting. He was there. When Olivia dreamed of becoming a surgeon, Robert quietly took another night job. When Ethan wanted to study engineering, Robert sold the only car he owned. His children never knew. They simply believed opportunities somehow appeared. Robert made sure of it. Years passed. Olivia graduated at the top of medical school. The entire audience applauded. But Robert remembered something no one else knew. The tuition check had been paid using money from the small house he inherited from his parents. He had sold it without telling anyone. That night, he celebrated alone with a takeaway burger. He never regretted it. Watching his daughter wear a white doctor's coat was worth every sacrifice. Success came quickly. Olivia became one of the youngest surgeons in the hospital. She bought designer clothes, a luxury apartment, a sports car. Soon, her friends were lawyers, executives, and wealthy investors. Slowly, the phone calls became shorter. The family dinners became rarer. Birthdays were missed. Excuses became easier. I'm busy, Dad. I'll call tomorrow. Tomorrow often became next month. Robert always smiled. Take care of yourself. He never asked for more. One afternoon, while Robert was polishing the emergency entrance, he overheard 2 young nurses talking. Did you hear? Dr. Olivia Hayes is being honored at the hospital charity gala tonight. They say the city's biggest donors will be there. Robert smiled proudly. His little girl, being recognized for saving lives. That evening, he returned home to his tiny flat. He opened his wardrobe. Only 3 jackets hung inside. 2 were worn from years of use. The third was the old navy blazer Sarah had bought him before she became ill. He gently brushed away the dust, smiled at the memory, and decided, tonight, he would surprise Olivia. Not as the janitor, as her father. The hospital ballroom looked magnificent. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above hundreds of guests. Luxury dresses, black tuxedos, soft piano music. Robert felt slightly out of place. But he walked in with quiet confidence. Because he wasn't there to impress anyone. He was there to congratulate his daughter. He spotted Olivia speaking with a group of wealthy donors. She looked elegant, confident, successful. His heart filled with pride. He slowly walked toward her. Olivia. She turned. For a brief second. Her smile appeared. Then disappeared. Several executives looked toward Robert. One asked, "Dr. Hayes. Who is this gentleman?" Robert waited, smiling, expecting to hear, "This is my father." Instead, Olivia laughed awkwardly. "Oh, he's one of our janitors. He likes attending hospital events." Robert's smile faded. Not because she called him a janitor. He had always been proud of his work. It was because she had erased 35 years of fatherhood. With one sentence. The executives nodded politely. One of them handed Robert a glass of water, thinking he was catering staff. "Could you clear these empty glasses when you have a moment?" Robert quietly accepted them. "Of course." He walked away, not wanting anyone to see the tears forming in his eyes. Standing alone near the balcony, he looked across the city skyline. Sarah's photograph remained inside his wallet. He whispered softly, "I kept my promise. I gave them everything. I just wish they remembered." Behind him, the gala host announced loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our hospital's chief executive officer." The room erupted into applause. Everyone turned toward the grand staircase. Robert slowly wiped his eyes. He didn't notice. The CEO had stopped walking, frozen, staring directly at him. His expression changed from surprise to disbelief. Then, without warning, the CEO ignored every donor, every politician, every television camera, and began running across the ballroom, straight toward Robert Hayes. The ballroom fell silent. More than 300 guests watched as the hospital's CEO ignored the red carpet, the photographers, and the city's most influential people. Instead, he ran straight toward the elderly janitor. Robert looked confused. Before he could speak, the CEO wrapped both arms around him. "Dad, I've finally found you." The room froze. Conversations stopped. Camera flashes lit up the ballroom. Even the musicians stopped playing. Olivia stared in disbelief. "Dad." The CEO stepped back, his eyes filled with tears. "You disappeared after I graduated. I've spent years trying to thank you." Robert smiled softly. "You don't owe me anything, Michael." Michael shook his head. "I owe you everything." The chairman of the hospital looked completely confused. "Michael, you know Mr. Hayes?" Michael laughed through tears. "Know him? This man gave me my life." He turned toward the guests. "Many of you know me as Michael Lawson, Chief Executive Officer of St. Augustine Medical Center. But before I became any of that, I was just a scared 16-year-old boy sleeping in a hospital waiting room." The ballroom became silent once again. No one had ever heard this story, not even Olivia. Michael continued. "My mother died from cancer. My father disappeared years before. I had nowhere to go. I spent nights hiding inside this hospital because it was warm. I thought no one noticed me." He smiled at Robert. "I was wrong. Every morning, this janitor brought me breakfast. Every evening, he made sure I had a blanket. He never asked for anything. He never judged me." Robert quietly lowered his eyes. One guest asked, "What happened then?" Michael smiled. "One night, I told him I wanted to quit school. I said life was already over. He looked at me and said something I'll never forget. 'Your circumstances are temporary. Your character is permanent.' He handed me an old notebook and told me, 'Write down the life you want.' I still have that notebook." Michael reached inside his jacket. He carefully removed a worn leather notebook. The edges were faded, the pages yellow with age. He held it up for everyone to see. "This notebook changed my life." He slowly opened the first page. Written in blue ink were Robert's words. Never let today's pain decide tomorrow's future. Several guests quietly wiped away tears. Michael smiled. Every week, Mr. Hayes checked my homework. He bought second-hand textbooks. When I couldn't afford college applications, he secretly paid every fee. Robert interrupted gently. I only helped. Michael shook his head. No. You became the father I never had. The chairman looked stunned. But how did you become his legal father? Michael smiled. When I turned 18, I asked him if I could use his last name. He refused. The guests looked surprised. Michael laughed. He said, "You don't need my name. Build your own." So I kept my own surname. But in my heart, he has always been Dad. The cameras focused on Robert. He looked embarrassed by the attention. I didn't do anything special. Michael immediately replied, "You changed a life. That's always special." Olivia stood frozen. Every memory came rushing back. The late-night shifts. The worn-out work boots. The birthdays her father quietly celebrated with homemade cake. The old jacket he never replaced. Suddenly, everything made sense. She realized the reason he never had expensive clothes was because every extra pound had gone to someone else. Her brother. And a lonely teenager who became one of the country's youngest hospital CEOs. One of the hospital trustees asked quietly, "Michael, why didn't you tell anyone this before?" Michael looked around the room. Because Dad never wanted recognition. He made me promise. He always said, kindness loses its meaning when it's performed for applause. At that moment, a nurse in the audience slowly stood up. I remember him. When I first started here 25 years ago, my husband was injured. I couldn't afford childcare. Mr. Hayes watched my little daughter every evening after work. Another doctor stood. He paid for my medical board exam. I thought it came from a scholarship. An elderly receptionist began crying. When my home burned down, he gave me the keys to his own flat for 2 months. Story after story filled the ballroom. No one had known the anonymous helper was always the same man. Robert Hayes. The quiet janitor. Michael looked toward Olivia. His voice softened. "Dr. Hayes. I don't know what happened tonight. But I heard what you said." The ballroom turned toward Olivia. Michael continued. "You introduced him as a janitor. There is no shame in being one. The shame is forgetting the man who helped everyone rise." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak, but no words came. She looked at her father. For the first time in years, she truly saw him. Not as an old janitor, not as an ordinary man, but as someone whose kindness had quietly transformed countless lives. And in that moment, she realized she had become the poorest person in the room, because while others saw Robert's heart, she had only seen his uniform. The ballroom was so quiet. You could hear the crystal chandeliers gently swaying above the guests. No one moved. No one spoke. Every eye was fixed on Olivia. The brilliant surgeon who had spent years saving lives now stood frozen, unable to face the one man who had given her everything. Slowly, she walked toward her father. Every step felt heavier than the last. When she finally stood in front of Robert, her voice trembled. "Dad, I'm so sorry." Robert looked at her with the same gentle eyes that had watched her grow from a little girl into a successful doctor. He didn't interrupt. He simply listened. Tears streamed down Olivia's face. "I spent years trying to fit into a world where everyone judged people by their titles. I was so desperate to be accepted that I became ashamed of the person who taught me never to judge anyone." She looked around the ballroom. "I introduced him as a janitor. But I should have introduced him as the greatest man I've ever known." The guests quietly applauded. But Olivia wasn't finished. She turned to the audience. "If any of you respected me before tonight, don't respect me because I'm a surgeon. Respect the man who worked 36 years so I could become one." The applause grew louder. Robert gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You've said enough. But Olivia shook her head. No, Dad. I've spent years saying too little. She reached into her handbag, pulled out her hospital identification badge, and slowly removed it. Everyone watched in confusion. She walked to the chairman of the hospital. I don't deserve this position if I've forgotten the values it stands for. The chairman looked shocked. Dr. Hayes. Please. She interrupted him. No. I need to earn the right to wear this badge again. Robert immediately stepped forward. No. Don't throw away your life's work because of one mistake. Olivia looked at him. I hurt you. Robert smiled gently. And now you're learning. That's what matters. He picked up her badge, placed it back into her hand. The world needs good doctors. It also needs humble ones. The ballroom erupted into applause. Michael, the CEO, wiped away his tears. Dad. There's one more thing. He walked onto the stage. The giant screen behind him lit up. A photograph appeared. Robert. 30 years younger. Still wearing the same blue janitor's uniform. Standing beside a frightened teenage boy. Michael. Another photograph appeared. Robert serving soup to homeless families. Another. Helping nurses move hospital beds after a flood. Another. Holding Christmas presents for children spending the holidays in the cancer ward. Then another. And another. For several minutes. The screen showed hundreds of photographs. 36 years of quiet kindness. None of them had ever appeared in newspapers. None had been posted online. Because Robert never wanted recognition. Michael smiled. 3 months ago. I began collecting these photographs. I wanted tonight to surprise the man who changed my life. He looked toward Robert. But after what happened, I realized. The surprise should belong to everyone. The audience stood. Many openly crying. Michael continued. From this day forward, the Robert Hayes Scholarship will provide full medical education grants for children of hospital cleaners, cafeteria workers, security guards, and maintenance staff. The crowd burst into applause. And our hospital's community care center will now carry the name, the Robert Hayes Family Center. Robert looked completely overwhelmed. I don't deserve this. Michael laughed softly. You've spent your whole life saying that. But everyone in this room knows the truth. The chairman stepped forward holding a small velvet box. Inside was a gold service medal. On the back were engraved the words, "True greatness is measured by the lives you lift." Robert accepted it with trembling hands. I've received many thank yous today. But I only have one request. The ballroom became quiet again. Tomorrow morning, when you see someone cleaning these floors, serving food, driving an ambulance, or emptying rubbish bins, look them in the eyes, smile, and remember, no honest job is ever small. The audience rose to its feet once more. A standing ovation filled the ballroom. Not for the CEO, not for the surgeons, but for the quiet janitor everyone had overlooked. 6 months later, the Robert Hayes Scholarship had already helped 12 students begin medical school. Olivia volunteered every weekend at the community care center. Not because anyone asked her to. Because she wanted to honor her father's example. One Saturday morning, a young cleaner nervously approached Robert. Mr. Hayes, my son wants to become a doctor, but I don't think we can afford it. Robert smiled. He gently placed the scholarship application into the man's hands. Never tell a child that a dream is too expensive. As Robert and Olivia walked through the hospital together, staff members smiled. Patients waved. Children ran over to hug him. Olivia quietly slipped her arm through his. You know, when I was little, I thought superheroes wore capes. Robert chuckled. And now? She smiled through tears. Now I know. Sometimes. They wear blue janitor uniforms. Robert laughed softly. No. They wear whatever clothes they're working in. Because character is never stitched onto a uniform. It's written by the choices we make every single day. And in the end, The man everyone overlooked. Left behind a legacy that no fortune could ever buy.